On a stormy night long ago, off the jagged coast of an island known as Blackwater Reach, a mighty ship called the Selene sailed through the treacherous waters. The Selene was a legendary vessel, renowned for its voyages across the seven seas, carrying cargo, treasure, and stories from distant lands. Captained by a fearless and seasoned mariner named Elias Rook, the crew trusted him to navigate even the roughest seas. But on this night, fate had other plans. The ship was returning home after a long journey to a far-off land, its hold full of rare spices, silks, and precious gems. The crew was eager to reach port and celebrate the success of their voyage. But as dusk turned to night, thick clouds rolled in, and the sea began to churn. Lightning crackled on the horizon, and the wind howled like a wild beast. Captain Rook stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the dark horizon. He had sailed through many storms, but something about this one felt different. The air was heavy, and the waves were rising fast. The crew scrambled to secure the sails, but no matter how hard they worked, the storm seemed to grow fiercer with every passing moment. Suddenly, through the rain and mist, they saw it, Blackwater Reach. The jagged rocks of the island's coast loomed ahead, barely visible in the storm's fury. It was a place sailors feared, known for swallowing ships whole. The waters around the island were said to be cursed, and many believed that once a ship crossed into its reach, it was doomed to sink. "Steer away!" Captain Rook shouted to his first mate, but the storm was too strong. The winds tore at the sails, and the ship was pushed relentlessly toward the sharp rocks. Despite the crew's best efforts, the ship was dragged closer and closer to the island's deadly shores. A massive wave crashed against the side of the Selene, throwing the crew off their feet. The ship's hull scraped against the rocks, and the sound of wood splintering filled the air. Water began to pour into the hold, and the ship was torn apart by the fury of the sea. "Abandon ship!" Rook commanded, but it was too late. The Selene groaned and shuddered, breaking in two as the waves slammed it against the rocks. Men were thrown into the sea, clinging to debris and each other as the storm raged on. Captain Rook, refusing to leave his ship, fought to keep control, but a towering wave crashed over him, sweeping him into the dark, cold waters. The last thing he saw before the sea claimed him was the shattered remains of his beloved ship sinking beneath the waves. When the storm finally passed and the dawn broke, the wreckage of the Selene washed ashore on Blackwater Reach. Only a handful of the crew survived, dragged from the water by the island's rocky shores. Captain Rook was nowhere to be found. The survivors, soaked and shivering, looked around the desolate island. Blackwater Reach was barren, covered in mist and shadow, with no sign of life. The air was still and eerily silent, as if the storm had taken not just the ship, but the very soul of the place. They gathered what little they could from the wreckage and tried to find shelter. As they explored the island, they discovered something strange, a scattering of wrecks, half buried in the sand, some ancient and others more recent. Ships from all eras and nations, all wrecked on the same cursed shores. Among the wreckage, they found remnants of lives long forgotten, chests of treasure, skeletons of sailors who had perished in the storms, and old journals filled with cryptic entries. One journal, in particular, stood out. It belonged to an old sea captain, whose final words chilled them to the bone. "The sea around Blackwater Reach is cursed. No ship that crosses these waters ever leaves. The island calls to the storm, and the storm calls to the sea. Beware, for once you are here, there is no escape." Days passed, and the survivors tried in vain to signal passing ships. But no one came. It was as if the island was hidden from the world, trapped in its own timeless void. The food they salvaged from the wreck was running out, and hope began to dwindle. One night, as they huddled around a makeshift fire, they heard a sound, faint at first, but growing louder. It was the sound of voices, carried on the wind. The crew looked at each other, their faces pale with fear. The voices were singing, a haunting melody that echoed across the island. Captain Rook appeared from the shadows. He was soaked, his clothes tattered, and his eyes distant, as if he had seen something beyond human comprehension. The crew rushed to him, asking where he had been, how he had survived. But Rook didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the sea, his steps slow and deliberate, as though drawn by an unseen force. "The sea has claimed me," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "And now it calls for you." Before anyone could stop him, Captain Rook walked into the water, disappearing beneath the surface without a struggle. The sea was calm, unnaturally so, and the mist closed in around the survivors. One by one, they began to hear the call, the same voices that had lured their captain into the depths. The survivors tried to resist, but the island's curse was too strong. The sea beckoned, and they followed, vanishing into the mist, their fate sealed like so many before them. To this day, sailors speak of Blackwater Reach in hushed tones. They say that on stormy nights, you can still hear the voices of the lost crew of the Selene, singing their mournful song, calling for others to join them in the depths. No ship that sails too close to Blackwater Reach ever returns, and the wreckage of the cursed island grows with each passing year, as the sea claims more souls for its dark embrace.